Welcome everyone. I hope you've been able to get a warm cup of tea or maybe a cold drink so that you can actually sit with us for that 1 hour that's to follow. We're actually very excited for the hands-on activities that Tanya has planned for us today. With this, I will start sharing my screen. Just give me one moment. And I'll also take this moment to confirm with Virat and Tanya that my screen is visible and there's no glitch that's happening at the moment.
It's visible, yes.
All right. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Learning Circle today, which is titled Writing the Self Demystified. Our agenda today is to bust some of the common myths that we have about writing the self. I think we've gotten to a point where we do get the formulas online. We know how to write an essay, what are the perfect things to maybe include, what are the things to keep an eye out for. But in some ways, that leads us to essays that look all the same for everyone. Whereas all of our stories, all of our journeys are so unique, and we want to be able to highlight that uniqueness so that we can actually stand out in a crowd. With that, we'll be able to bust some of the common myths that we have, get to know what we can actually do instead. And I'm quite excited to be able to dive into that. This learning circle is actually going to give us a glimpse into our course that we're doing this winter, which is a writing and communication course titled Building Narratives for Self, Writing an Effective College Essay. So, as many of the answers mentioned, it seems to be so that not only will we be able to benefit in our self development and how we can frame our own stories, it'll also help us quite tangibly in being able to work on our applications to be able to create essays that are impactful and effective. This course will be running from December 20th till Jan 11th. I think this is the season where everyone's trying to get their essays ready. So I think that this might work really well. Some of us may have first drafts that we've already worked on. Some of us may be trying to start the journey just about now. So this course will actually really help you in getting personalized feedback in a live format. It'll be taught by Professor Arpita Das, who is the Associate Professor of the Practice of Academic Writing at Ashoka University. Over her professional journey, I think she's helped multiple students from PhD students to master's students to undergrad students and younger ones as to how to write essays that can be quite impactful and actually tell their story in an effective manner. In this course, you'll actually get to learn how to hone your unique voice. You'll also be able to work on a concrete essay that you will be taking away with you at the end of the course. You'll identify the strengths and weaknesses that you may have as a writer. So, if you are someone who's interested in writing as a skill or as a hobby, that's something that you'll benefit from as well. And lastly, we also have the extended opportunity for select few students where they'll get one-on-one mentoring sessions so that they can actually continue to work on their essays to make it more application ready. So this course for students entering grades 9 and 12, I think is quite timely and impactful. Now I won't take too much time and actually introduce you to the teaching fellow who will be teaching you this course, Tane, who is joining us today. So he's a teacher and researcher who's pursuing questions of landscape, language, and feeling. His educational background has been in English. He did his bachelor's and postgraduate diploma from Ashoka University. And he's currently working as a project associate for the Center of Translation at Ashoka as well. We're very happy to have him on board for the Writing an Effective College Essay course. And with this, I would pass the mic on to Tane so that he can actually get the ball rolling with all of the hands-on activities that we've planned for you today. This workshop will act as a glimpse to the sessions that you'll have in the course itself and really give you a sneak peek into the skills that you need to have for being able to write an essay that's a bit more unique and more you.
Thank you, Isha, for that introduction. It feels a bit odd to be introduced while I'm sitting right here, so I won't waste any more time doing that. I just want to start with a couple of things. I see we have around 70 people here, so it's a big number. Just some ground rules. I like to be interrupted. Please interrupt me. This is supposed to be an interactive session. You can just address me as Tane. No other formalities are required. It was very interesting for me to see some of the early responses that we got to the question Isha posed, because it's always fascinating to see how every batch of new writers and applicants, how their anxieties change, how their worries change, how their questions change. I'm going to add a little more to the disclaimer that Isha already sort of hinted at, this is a glimpse. So you're not going to get everything. You're not going to get all the principles today. What you are going to get is what writing doesn't have to be, what writing doesn't need to be, what writing is often, what writing a personal essay is often thought of is quite rigid and quite bound by certain essential ideas. Today, we're going to bust some of those commonly held conceptions. We're not going to get all our techniques today. For that, you'll have to join the course. Um, so today what we're dealing with are some misconceptions about writing a personal essay. And the format for this is going to be very simple. I'm going to introduce the misconception. I'm going to bust it, and then I'm going to hand it over to you so that we can sort of work together to bust this myth. Yeah. Isha, can we go to the next slide, please? All right. So myth number one, the milestone. Okay. A lot of online and conventional knowledge about writing a personal essay and autobiographical piece, especially in the context of college applications, will have you believe that you have to have an essay that is about milestones. Okay. The big achievements and the big moments, the big wins, the big losses. That is not necessarily the case. And so when we bust this myth, we come upon our first principle of writing an effective but also interesting and unique personal essay, which is that writing the self is not just about the milestones or the big moments. Can we go to the next one, please? Yes. Okay. So what I want to really introduce with this principle is the idea that a lot of good writing. Pick up any memoir, any autobiography, any personal narrative that has been successful, and you will notice that it is not some kind of a summary of all the achievements, losses, traumas, victories of one's life. And colleges are not looking for that either. The way to make your writing interesting, oh, sorry about that disturbance, we'll just wait for it to pass for a second. Sorry, it's almost over. All right, we can proceed now. So, the way to write an effective and unique essay is to work with the unconventional, the ordinary, the everyday moments of your life that may not be turning points for others, but that may be turning points for you. So, with that, I want to ask you my first question, which is what are some of the unconventional or ordinary turning points of your life? What are some of these moments that may not be a birthday or a graduation, award, a scholarship, a college acceptance, some kind of painful loss, or some kind of big victory? Some of the quieter moments of your life that have had a big impact that you feel you could write a narrative or would want to write a narrative around. Can I get some responses? We have quite a few people. And perhaps not in the chat. If any of you would like to speak, that would be better.
Just raise your hands and we'd be able to enable that feature so that we can have you here and actually
Yeah.
interact with you. Yeah.
If you're feeling shy, we can start with some responses on the chat. Okay, Akshay, and then we have Anjali. I think, yeah,
Namaste.
go for it, Akshay.
So I think one of these normal moments in my life is that one everyday English class where my English teacher actually has this habit of telling a lot of philosophy alongside the lessons. So especially today, we were doing this one chapter in grade 12. It's called the interview. So she told us this whole thing about how privacy is a very important thing in today's life. And that actually changed a bit of me because that changed the way I thought about each and everything I see online, especially all the interviews at this point.
Okay, that's great, Akshay, because you've sort of hit the nail on the head. A turning point often arrives when something doesn't remain just what it is, not just an English class, but a life lesson. And that's the kind of framing that will make your essay effective. So that's a very good response. Anjali?
Okay, so it's slightly similar to what Akshay said actually. I also faced it in English class. So I have a very small class in it's around like maybe 4 to 5 students. And these are now my closest friends that I've ever had. I made these friends after like a really rough patch with another group of friends, which resulted in me breaking off and cutting them off completely. These guys sort of became my very safe space, those who loved English just as much as me. And our teacher's amazing. He's told us a bunch of stories, how they connect back to the topics we learn, and this has become like my personal paradise in a way. So
Okay.
it's very heartwarming for me.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think that was very well put, a personal paradise, a safe space. I think spaces do become transformative. And writing about those spaces effectively, creating the atmosphere of that transformation can certainly be one way in which you can write yourself very effectively. Let's hear from Sanjana too, and then I believe there are a couple of responses in the chat. Can I request Isha after Sanjana to take those on and then we can address them? Yeah, go for it, Sanjana.
Hi. So, for me, a really huge transformative moment was, I think, when I was like around 10 years old. And it was the day I realized Santa Claus wasn't real. And that day I cried so much, but it actually made me realize that I have to start thinking for myself, and I can't just blindly believe what my parents are telling me. And I need that logical proof before I actually believe someone.
No, I think you're absolutely right. That's a wonderful moment because our eyes don't open to things when we pass a grade or graduate or get a job. Our eyes open in these small moments where suddenly we realize that something in our world has shifted. And after the painful part of accepting that shift, that's when we can have growth. So I think that was really well put. Thank you for that, Sanjana. Isha, there's a couple on the chat. Let me just take a
We
look.
also have Mira who might want to just respond
Oh,
via.
sorry, I couldn't see
Yeah.
that. Sorry, Kia.
Yeah.
Hello. So I just want to say that some of the most turning points of my life was just being a class leader and just going and calling teachers to come and take class, or maybe there's a small group project and I'm the leader. So it seems very small. I mean, all of us would have been a class leader, group leader at
Mm.
one point, but then that are actually great turning experience for me because I learned to talk with different types of people. I learned how to coordinate with people. So even though it may just be for making a chart or perhaps preparing a speech, I think just being with people, being with classmates, and since my classmates change every year, it taught me how to speak with people, how to adapt to my surroundings. So I think these ordinary chances to be a class leader were really turning points in my life.
Okay, that's wonderful, Meera. Also, I really like your framing because you've picked an incident, but you haven't just, or a responsibility, but you haven't just left it at that. You added a reflection. That is, in fact, the way to write effectively. Really well done. Yeah. Um,
Thank you.
I think perhaps we can take one more question from the chat, or if someone wants to speak, and then I think we should move on. What do you think, Isha?
That sounds good. We do have two responses from the chat, so I'll
Okay,
read them out right now.
all right.
Till then, if someone else wants to raise their hand. So we had Ashna share that one of the milestones for her was the day when you made that one friend who you trust unconditionally and they became the emotional support of your life.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's lovely. I think we all have those relationships that grow, that develop, that become something far bigger than just a friendship. Yeah, I think that could work quite well.
Yeah, and for Nilakash, I hope I've pronounced the name right. It was when my teacher told you you can laugh at me right now, but life will hit you hard and laugh at you.
Okay, that's quite humorous actually, and turns of phrases are very good places to begin, to have as a jumping off point for further reflection. So I think that works too. We've got quite quite a range of, I think Aisha also has her hand
Yes.
up. Perhaps
Yes,
Aisha,
yes.
you'll
It's
be our,
Oishi.
sorry.
It's Oishi,
Oh,
actually.
sorry, Oishi. You'll be our last respondent, and then I think we have to move on. But yes, go for it, Oishi.
Yeah, so I think a big turning point in my life was when I decided to raise my hand in a new school one day because I changed schools when I was in class 10.
Hmm.
And I'm I never thought of myself as much of a debater. And there was this debate competition going on, and I just raised my hand. I just did it. And then I realized that I could actually debate with a lot of passion. And that kind of made me realize that I have a new hobby. That's all.
No, I think that's wonderful because courage is not only about some really big moments. You don't have to run across the street and save someone who's about to get hit by a car. Courage is actually the recognition that you are afraid and that you do something despite that. And I think that could be a great context for an essay. Okay, I think that was very productive. Thank you all for being so participative. Before we move on to the next myth, what I thought I would do is just show you an example of a writer, or actually we should call her an artist, and you'll see why, who has used this ordinary moment to tell her story. So I think let's move to the next slide and we can take it from there. All right, so here is the first panel from a graphic novel by a very famous cartoonist called Alison Bechdel. This is from her graphic novel called Fun Home, and it is an autobiographical novel that is about her relationship with her father. So it's about a very intense, distant, complicated relationship, but you can notice how she begins. The first panel is not about intensity or distance or an inability to speak. It's about a small, playful memory from her childhood when her father is playing aeroplane with her, just raising her up on her feet and lifting her up. It's not a moment you would think an intense autobiography could be written about, and yet Alison Bechtel begins with this. But she doesn't only do that. What she manages to do is utilize this ordinary moment to its fullest potential. So if you look at this line, it was a discomfort well worth the rare it was a discomfort well worth the rare physical contact and certainly worth the moment of perfect balance when I soared above. So even though it's an ordinary playful moment, she is able to hint and suggest the larger themes of the graphic novel, which are distance, this complicated relationship that does not have much intimacy. So you can use these ordinary moments. She also does another thing which many of you may not have noticed. The novel draws on this Greek myth called the myth of Icarus, and she manages to sneak in a reference. So if you look at this box, it says, in the circus, acrobatics where one person lies on the floor balancing another are called Icarian games. So that is a reference to Icarus, and she subtly hints at the major influences on her narrative. So ordinary moments don't just have to remain ordinary. If you write them well, they can really elevate your story. If she just begun by giving everything away, telling us that this is a story about distance between me and my father, it would have been far less effective. Okay. So I'll do this. We'll move on to the next myth, and after each one, I'll give you a short example from a writer or an artist or a novelist. And if you have any questions in the middle of that, please raise your hands. If anything is unclear, raise your hands. Okay. For now, let's move to the next myth. Thank you, Isha. All right. This is related to the first one. Writing the self does not have to be comprehensive. Okay, that's our principle. The myth around this is that when, especially in the context of a common app essay or a college essay, is that you have to provide every detail of everything you've done. That is not what is required of writing a self. Say you've taken a college level class and you're including that in your application. The admissions committee does not want to hear every single concept that you learned in that class. They want to hear what you took away from that class. So the larger principle is that when you're describing some part of your life, you don't have to give every single detail. You only have to give those details that are relevant to the story you're trying to tell. Okay, so can we move on to the next section where the question arrives? Thank you. All right. So, and this is connected to the larger principle of writing in general, editing. Before we can write the self, we must know how to edit. So it's not just about what you would add in, it's also about what you would leave out from your story, because you can't write everything and you don't need to write everything. So here's my question to you all. What would you leave out from your self narrative? Okay. If you're telling your story, what doesn't get in? Let's have some hands again. You all have raised my expectations after the first round. No? Do I have to give an example from my life? Because I can do that.
I do want to say, Tane, in some ways, I really resonate with Anjali, and I was going to bring up this point as a participant and as a receiver of what you've been sharing. That I think we're so used to being told that everything important needs to be there that it feels almost painful to even think of what would I leave out, because I did all of this so that I could include it. So I think that might be one of the reasons why we're not getting so many hands. We've also gotten a request to repeat the question,
Yes.
so maybe we
Okay.
could go over that.
So I'll repeat the question, which is that, and I'll also qualify it after that, which is that when you are trying to tell your story, you must know how to edit. Yes. So the question is, if you were telling your story, what parts of your life would you leave out? Would you edit out such that you could make an effective narrative? Okay, now let me also qualify this. We are here today thinking about essays. Okay, that's a particular format. The place to put in everything you've done is your activities list or your CV. Those places are specifically meant for everything that you've done. For instance, in my own life, if I were writing a college essay, okay, I may not put my I may put in my CV all the college level credit bearing courses that I've taken, but I may not put my childhood drawing classes in my CV. Okay, I would use my childhood drawing classes for my essay, where I wouldn't talk about my college level credit bearing courses. I would use my childhood drawing classes to say that even though I don't want to be an artist, this is where I learned to identify patterns. This is where I learned to see life in a different perspective. Okay, so when I'm asking this question, what I mean to ask you is, what parts of your life would you actually include in the essay? Just the other way around. What parts of your life would you not include in your essay? Does that help clarify things a little bit? I know it's a question we're not used to answering. I think Anjali has said joys, pains, traumas, triumphs, everything needs to be there. It's what makes me who I am, flaws and all. You're right. You do need to present a holistic picture of who you are. But writing is also a craft. Okay, it is not a summary or a report. Your life is too big to fit into one essay. So you do have to choose which parts of yourself are you showing this college committee, this larger audience. You do have to keep that in mind, because you're not going to be able to summarize everything effectively. Uh, I think we had one hand up too. Was I wrong, Isha?
Yes, we do. Myra has raised her hand, and I think she can unmute now.
All right,
Yeah.
yes.
So I think maybe we would focus less on like the various skills or achievements we have, and maybe focus
Hmm.
more on like more personal, memorable experiences or personally meaningful experiences.
Okay, can you elaborate on that? If you were to leave out a skill or achievement, what would you leave out?
So for me, maybe I would like not talk about, like, for instance, if I have a certain skill in like a subject like maths, for instance, maybe I would not talk about that and instead talk about something that's more personally meaningful to me, which is like something I've developed or you know, have taken a personal interest in.
Yeah, I think you're right. And there's no reason for you not to include math. Okay, you can include your skill in math. It just depends on how you include it. So, for instance, if math has given you a sense of seeing patterns in the world, you can include that aspect of your skills in math. But you don't need to tell us, I know this theorem. I have completed this level of calculus. That's what I mean by writing the self doesn't have to be comprehensive. Every single detail doesn't have to be in. You need to choose which parts, which facets of your life are going to enter the picture. Okay, I think we have a lot of responses on the chat. I'm just going to look at some of them. um let me take a look. Navya, as a storyteller, I will erase my, where did it go? As a storyteller, I will erase my personal life story and focus more on the relevant aspects. If you'd like to make it more expressive or poetic here. Okay, yeah, you're right. I mean, I wouldn't say that you need to erase your story completely, but you do need to perhaps curate your story. Perhaps I would remove this from Akshay. Perhaps I would remove the moment I got the award, but keep the journey that led up to the stage. I think that's really well put. I think you don't need to show us the glistening trophy. You can show us the tears and sweat instead. I think that works very well. Whenever we do something courageous or where we learn something, so I'm assuming, Om, that you would include that and not exclude that. Um, Okay, Anjali says, okay, you leave out your lower secondary test grades. I think that's a good idea. And yeah, you can explain your journey without including the numbers. On the same note, being an artist and having taken art class in 7th, 12th grade, I learned to see emotion, depth, and the hidden patterns and meanings in images. This also helped when I met new people as I could understand them from my face. Okay, Rahul, I think that's a really good response. Kaira Gupta, I believe that instead of talking about how you've achieved something, you should talk about the process. You should talk about what motivated you to do so and how the journey shaped you as a person. You all are right. I think everyone's picking up on this idea that we don't need the achievement, we only need the journey. I'm not saying that you can't have some moments of the achievement. For instance, you could begin with a snapshot shot of the achievement and then transition to the journey. So it's not that you can't have the achievement and only must have the journey. It is that you probably are not going to have the space, time, or necessity to include every aspect of this journey. I know there's a lot more responses, but what do you feel, Isha? How much time do I have?
I know we're running a bit short on time, but I also have seen that Asmi and Hajira have had their hands raised. So maybe we could actually hear from them what
All
they
right,
have to say.
let's hear from Asmi and Hajira, and then we'll move on to the next myth, I think. Yeah. All right. Go for it.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. So I think this is a little personal for me, especially. So as you said, I feel like achievements are a very big part of someone who like started their journey very late. So let's say from 10th grade or 11th grade onwards, especially with extracurriculars. But once you actually sit down and you look at all of those extracurriculars, you'll realize that there are approximately like 40 to 50% of extracurriculars that you did just for the sake of it, or to be eligible to run in that race, but not for something that you wanted to do yourself, or maybe did not even have such an impact on you. So
Yeah.
I feel like those are the extracurriculars that I would like to leave out. And even if something seems very insignificant, for example, maybe an art exhibition that you did in like 8th or 9th grade, I think I would much rather prefer to include that.
You're right. And I think the principle holds. Include that which is meaningful to you or that which can add to the effectiveness of your essay. For everything else that you did just for the sake of it, we all do it for college. Put that in your CV, put that in your activities list. That's where it belongs. Yes. Hajira?
I would not add that I'm a very heavy reader in my college application. However, I would say that reading books has helped me understand very important aspects in life.
No, I think you're absolutely right. For instance, nobody would want to hear how many hours you read weekly or how many books you have read each week, but they might want to see a nice moment where a book really changed something for you. So I think you're right. What you take away from the reading, what that means to you is really important. How many books you read, that will in any case come through in that observation that you provide us, in that glimpse, in that moment. Okay, I think that was very good. Thank you, everyone. I think let's move on to the example for this one. Isha, can we go to? Yes. So in the interest of time, I won't read the whole thing out. I'll just give you a brief. This is from one of India's most pioneering um, autobiographers and writers, Bama. This is from her autobiography called Karika. And um, in this section of the autobiography, she is describing her street to us, the street on which she lives. Okay. But you will see that she is not giving us the dimensions of the street, the exact locations of each shop, the exact addresses of each of her neighbors, where her house is. What she's doing instead, and to put it very simply, is she's giving us a vibe of the street. She's chosen this idea of the names and the way that the people on the street give each other these names that are often rude and disrespectful, but that are also intimate and familiar. And through this whole detailing of the names, she is giving us a flavor of where she lives instead of giving us the exact details of where she lives. Because we are not architects, we are not policymakers, we don't want to know her exact address. What we want is to get a sense of her life, to get a flavor of her life. That's what it means to write without necessarily being comprehensive. Okay, where you give us a flavor, taste of your life, that we can, so that we can understand you better without giving us details that don't add to your story. Okay. I think if we have the time, I would like to move on to one last myth. Is that okay, Isha?
Yes, that's perfectly fine. I'll just move on to the next.
All right. Thank you, Isha. All right. This one, if you watched movies or TV shows, I'm sure that you already know by now that writing does not have to be linear or only about the present. But the important aspect here is that often when we're writing the self, including when we're writing college essays or personal narratives, we might be tempted to make the essays chronological. Okay, because chronology is the easiest way to make sense of a life. That is the way that we are used to making sense of a life. But that is exactly, once again, I'm coming back to my recurring theme of the CV. That is exactly why you have a CV. CVs are chronological. Essays needn't be chronological. Okay. If you, in fact, writing chronologically is often not going to work because you are trying to tell a story of transformation, a story of growth that is going to happen at different paces, at different moments, at different times for each of us. So, writing chronologically is, in fact, not the best way to write the self, and it certainly does not need to be the only way to write the self. Isha, can we have the questions so that we get some responses? Okay, so here's my question. If you had to present yourself on an alternative timeline, okay, one that is not chronological, where would you begin your narrative and where would your narrative end? And briefly, why do you choose to begin where you choose to begin? And why do you bring your narrative to a close where you choose to bring it to a close? You all can take a second to think and then we can. Just to simplify the question, where would your essay begin? At what point in your life or at what moment in your life? And where would your essay end? Now remember, this can't be chronological. That's the challenge. You have to pick a moment somewhere in the middle of your life or at the end of everything and then go back or start in the middle, go to the beginning, come to the end, return to the middle. Any formulation you like. Any volunteers?
Okay.
We have Akshay raising his hand.
All
Here
right.
you go.
Thank you, Akshay. Go for it.
It's me again. I think I would start with the day I was appointed vice head boy of the school. And from
Okay.
there, I would go towards that ninth grade Akshay who looked up to his elder brother and aspired to hold a post in the Students' Council. And
Mm.
from there, I would skip to 11th grade Akshay, who was appointed the house captain of his house. And then I will skip to the 10th grade Akshay, who was still the aspirational young child but knew where he had to improve. This would allow me to first set a narrative that I did achieve everything, then show the aspiration, then show again come back to the narrative that I did achieve some part of it, but there was still something more to go towards. And then coming to 10th grade would show the actual journey and the moment of realization that changed everything for me.
Okay, I really like your thought process. You really thought about how to make it a cogent narrative, and that's exactly the kind of thing that we want to do. Perhaps with a little more training and practice, we can refine this because writing non-linearly is not so easy. Okay, so the constant back and forth will have to be fine-tuned in writing. For that, join the course. But I think your thought process was great. We may also have to do a little bit of work to try and mitigate the damage done to the milestone principle, but very cogent narrative. I like the thought process. Thank you, Akshay. Um, Anyone else? Oh, couple of hands.
Yes. Mira, would you like to go next?
Yes, I would like to go next. So I think I'll start with when I was in ninth grade, because at that time it was quite difficult for me to adapt in, with a new classroom, a new syllabus and everything. So I'll start with how I was able to cope up with it. Then I thought I could go back to seventh grade when I had a similar kind of experience, but how I coped up with that. And then now in 10th grade, and when I look back at both, I am able to learn from my experiences in both grades. So it may be a bit chronological, but that was how I would like to shape my narrative. So
I think that's fine, and that a little bit of chronology does not do any harm. I think the main thing to understand is that you don't have to begin at the beginning and end at the end. If the main thing is to understand what are those moments that you want included in your essay, and how can you organize them most effectively. Okay, thank you, Meera. Who's next, Isha? Sorry, I'll just leave that to you.
Yes. Anjali, it's you next.
Hi, me again. So I actually want to start off with the day I lost SPL. So that was the school pupil leader, basically. So
Mm.
I ran as a 11th grader, like maybe 3 months ago. And this role as school pupil leader is technically unofficially in my school a 12th grade position. There has not been a single 11th grader who has ever won. So every single person in my grade and every other grade told me I wouldn't win. Even some of my friends did too, though they said it like pretty gently. So I was running against around 7 other seniors and had to give multiple public speeches to teachers, staff members, students, everybody. Even after that, through like maybe a week of preparation and all that, I managed to get to the top two. And I lost by like, you could count the number of votes that I lost by on your fingers. I actually ran not when people ask me why I even ran in the first place, knowing that I'd probably lose. I told them specifically I ran not to win exactly, but mainly to show others that it is very much possible to stand out from the crowd in your own way and go for something, even though everybody thinks you could fail. And somehow, winning that, I managed to gain the favor of basically everybody in my entire grade from 9th to 12th now. So I've made a lot more friends and gone on a really big journey now. So that was worth more than winning could ever be.
Okay, I actually like that because what you are conveying here is also a sense of time that where in a few years feel like a long journey, so we can play with time and twist it around in different ways. To say that something is non chronological doesn't necessarily mean that the past and the present have to be flipped over. What it can also mean is that different periods of time take up that much space in your life, and if you're able to convey the size of that space, the amount of learning, that can also be a way to write non-linearly.
And thanks to that, I managed to inspire like basically my younger juniors as well, which is what I wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very well formulated thought. Thank you, Anjali. Isha, who is next?
Next is Anya. Do you want to take the floor now?
Yes, hello. First of all, I'm really sorry if there's any disturbance out here in Mumbai. We really love Diwali and it starts
No
with.
worries. In Delhi, we love it too.
So for myself personally, I would start with the present,
Mm,
and then somewhere in the middle of my essay, I would perhaps move to the time when we had COVID going on. So that would be when I was in the
mm,
grade. I think that the pandemic was a particularly transformative experience for me because I was just about gaining consciousness about the world, and my experience as compared to everyone else was so different because I had to do it entirely in isolation in a room. So in that sense, that's where I would start. It reflected a lot in my personal journey, like how I learn as a person, who I am as a student, but also like my values, and how I deal with things in my life, my
mm.
personality. So then I would also, by the end of the essay, come back to the present because I also think there's a little bit of beauty in uh, talking about all of this in hindsight. So I
Hmm.
would use that perspective at the very end, and that's how I would tie it off.
Okay, that's great actually. I think that could actually, with very little work, work as a good structure for an essay, especially in the context of writing non-linearly or non-chronologically, because the pandemic in itself messes with time. It messed with our conception of time. It's a blank space. It's a rupture. It's an interruption in the middle of the flow of this decade. So I think thinking about the pandemic, if your essay is going to think about the pandemic, a non-linear structure would actually work extremely well for that. Given the fertile global context you would have to work with, and take your essay forward, connect it with the world. So I think that's great. Thank you, Anya. Um, who do we
And
have?
next we have Oishi, if you want to take the stage now. Yeah.
Hello. So, basically, I think that the way I would introduce a
Sorry,
non-linear.
Oishi, could I request
Hello.
you to be slightly louder? I
Yes,
couldn't
yes, for
quite.
sure. For sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the way I would kind of introduce this non-linear structure to my essay is that I would start describing an event from the middle, something like while I held on to the mic on the podium with sweaty hands, I thought about what sixth grade me would have felt at this moment. And then I would kind of go back to sixth grade and what sixth grade me is thinking about this. She's paranoid, she's very scared. And by this, I think this would show a lot of growth, how much I have changed
Hmm.
over the years, and the development and the things that I've achieved, which I could never have even imagined when I was young.
I think that's great, Oishi, because you've touched upon a particular aspect of being non-linear that we haven't in the past, which is that being non-linear doesn't necessarily mean going back in time and describing a physical event from the past. It can also mean going back in time or jumping forward in time psychologically. And I think that's a great way to write about growth, write about learning. And by the way, you are not the first person to think about writing beginning in the middle of an incident. In fact, most classic, some of the biggest writers in the world have done exactly that. The Mahabharata begins in the middle of the story. Most Greek myths begin in the middle of the story. In fact, when you study writing and literature, that's one of the first things you learn. Writing in medias res, beginning in the middle. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that works. It's a tried and tested technique. Good job. Thank you.
I actually learned this technique from To Kill a Mockingbird. It
Yes.
actually starts on the end and then it goes.
Yes. Well, To Kill a Mockingbird is not exactly in medias res, but your point is taken. Yes. Next, is it Hajira? Isha?
Yes, we have Hanjira.
Yes, go for it.
I would like to talk about my 10th grade where I single-handedly um, hosted an event.
Hmm?
And but in my ninth grade me, I would rely on everyone else to do the event. I would not be confident enough to host it by myself.
Okay, so you would begin in the 10th grade and then reflect on the ninth grade to see what kind of growth you've had. That works well, Hajira. Thank you for that. I believe there's a couple of things in the chat as well. I'm just going to quickly take a look at those. Uh, I think I'll let Isha and Virat take some of the parent questions, but I just want to see if there's a lot in the chat, so I'm only going to take the most recent ones actually. Um,
Tane, I think I can help you out with the chat because I've been keeping an eye out for it.
all right.
So,
Okay. Thank you, Isha.
no worries at all. I do want to say this as a preliminary warning. Guys, we have a lot of responses and I've been able to read through all of them. We're really, really grateful that you're sharing your entire narratives and the ideas that you have. I will be going very randomly, so whatever shows up on my screen is something that I'll be sharing with Tanya so that we get to hear their thoughts on it.
True
So
college
we have
experience.
yeah. So with Ikansh, we actually got to hear of how first he would tell about my fear of hostel and hostel life, especially after he first watched movies. Then he would tell about his course in YSB and how he learned about different things and realized that he really liked the hostel life at Ashoka. So I
Hmm.
think that's one connection that we can see and a non-linear aspect to some extent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. Isha, why don't we do one thing? Why don't you read out a couple of the responses and I can respond to them together, bringing together all the ideas.
Yes, that sounds perfect. So we have
All
Arohi mentioning that she'd start with a moment where I'm confidently sharing my ideas with others, something
right.
younger me never imagined doing. Then I'd jump to the curious kid who loved exploring and asking endless questions. I'd end in the present, realizing that spark never left, it just grew stronger. Then we also have Priya mentioning, I would like to start by talking about my journey from the 10th grade and specifically the moment when I actually cried in maths class. Then continue by talking about how that moment changed my life and made me realize that there are multiple things that are yet to pass by.
Okay. Sorry, go
And
ahead.
I'll do one last one.
Sure.
I'm so sorry if I get the name pronunciation wrong, so please feel free to raise your hand, Raul. But he would start with his 7th grade, where he struggled with studies in an online school due to the pandemic, which is why he first learned what true hard work is and then go on to Raul in 11th grade, where he won captain of his schoolhouse and learned about being a leader. Then move on to Raul in 10th grade, where he realized that despite having learning struggles, he can actually excel in academics. And finally end in 2nd grade, where he would have, sorry, just one second, where he things are moving. Yes. Where he made a friend that has stood by him for almost half his life and realized that he doesn't need 100 friends when he actually has that one friend.
Okay. What I really like about all these responses is that what seems to be coming through from them is that most of you have a fairly developed sense of how non-linear writing or non-chronological writing can be a very effective tool to demonstrate growth and change and learning. And that's coming through very well in all your responses. And that's, of course, one aspect of writing a successful college essay. What we do need to think a little bit more about in the future is style. How does non-linear writing add to the style and effectiveness of an essay? Yes, showing your growth is very important, and I think all of you have captured that. But this is also a writing technique. It's a technique about craft, and I think that only comes with practice and workshopping. So, for now, really good job. Isha, I think we can move on to the example. I'll just take that once, and then if we have time, yes. All right. So this is an example that I specifically chose from a novel. For those of you who are taking IB English, I think perhaps some of you would have had to read Purple Hibiscus. But it's a novel by a very famous writer. For those of you who don't know it, it's a novel from a very famous writer from Nigeria, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and um, the reason I picked this novel, even though it's fiction, is because it demonstrates non-linear writing very well. Both these excerpts are from the first section of the novel. The first part is the opening line, and the last part and the second paragraph are the last few lines of this section. Okay. I won't really go over the lines. What I wanted to talk about was the structure of the novel. So the first section of the novel is all set on this one Sunday. This one Sunday where the narrator feels her life was changed. It was a turning point in the life of her family. Okay, this section is titled Palm Sunday. Okay, and it ends with the line, but my memories did not start at Sukkah. They started before, when all the hibiscuses in our front yard were a startling red. And then she moves on, and the novel moves to a section called Before Palm Sunday. So she actually goes back in time from this moment, this turning point, this Sunday. And the third section of the novel is after Palm Sunday. So then, after going back, it comes to the time period after the turning point. So, in this way, the turning point is completely explored. You're given a sense of it, you're given the history behind it, and then you see its consequences. And the interesting thing is that the novel ends with the section that's simply called the present. Okay, this present is the narrator's present, where the narrator is as she tells her story. So you see that we don't get a simple conception of time in this writing. And that's what makes the novel effective. That it begins with this moment of crisis, moves on to give you the history of that moment, tells you what happens after that moment, and then reflects on the writing itself by being in the narrator's present. So you can play with language, twist it, um, turn it upside down to make your writing most effective. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think with this example, and we've got quite a few responses, and we do need to cover a couple more logistical things. I think I'm going to hand it over to Isha after a quick closing. This was just a glimpse. This was just about what you don't need to do when you write. We haven't yet gotten to the actual techniques that come in, that play into craft and writing. For that, you'll hear more in the course. Thank you all for your wonderful participation today. Isha will take over.
All right. So I know that we're very close to running over time. So I'll very quickly go over some of the logistical things and also then open up for Q&A, because I think after these three myths and really having our eyes opened in terms of how we can actually frame an essay, I think we might have a lot of questions. I can see one in the chat box already. So I know that the moment we open for Q&A, which is the one that I'll start with, before that, I'll just cover some logistical things. Just give me one moment. Yes. All right. Figuring out some technical things. We'll get started in 1 second. And yes, I think my screen should be visible now, right?
It's loading. Yeah, it's visible now.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Tanya. So, as Tanya mentioned, this has been a glimpse into what building narratives for self is going to be like. I think it really gives us a sneak peek into what it can be, but it also cannot do justice to the 4 weekends that you'll actually get to interact with Tanya and Professor Arpita and to get to really know what your essay can look like. Honestly speaking, all of these responses and engagements really had me thinking how engaging that classroom is going to look like. With that, I wanted to share a bit more about Horizons Achievers program so that you know what you'll be signing up for this winter. So Horizons Achievers program are actually specially curated for high schoolers that are entering grades 9 and 12. And this program specifically is for people who are interested in applying to top universities in India and abroad, because I know that personal essays have become such an important part of our applications. I think they are the ones that really help us in standing out. And we are so anxious about what to put and what not to put. And I think we've been able to get some of these answers today, and we really want to expand upon that. I'll also give you some of the features of Horizons Achievers program. So one thing is that we really try to prioritize having deeply immersive learning experiences where when you're joining online, you're actually able to engage with one another, build upon each other's responses, and learn in a collaborative environment where it's not happening in silos, but actually you're benefiting from some of the realizations and epiphanies that other peers are also happening. The other one is that it's taught by leading global faculty and industry experts. I think you've gotten a taste of that with Tane's session today. We also have hands-on learning with capstone projects, which refers to the fact that you'll actually be working on the essay rather than just getting to know how you can write the essay. And I think what really helps with that is that you get personalized feedback on the essay as and when you work on different sections. One of the reasons is that we have a 90% course completion rate, ensuring that whoever joins us is actually able to see through the journey. And lastly, you get the opportunity to have an extended learning after the course ends as well. So a select few students, based on faculty discretion, can actually have one-on-one mentoring sessions with Professor Arpita and Tane to actually really hone their voice and build better essays for college as well. Um, this being the extended, in the past, extended opportunities for different courses have taken different forms. It's also gotten to a point where we've had students visit us on campus for biosciences. For writing, we've also had people get more mentorship. We've had people do sessions with PhD students. And for this course, I've mentioned that the mentoring sessions would be the extended opportunity. And lastly, hear from our past students. We've been running the course for writing and communication over the last couple of years. And we've really, one resonant sentiment that we've received is that I used to be so scared of the cursor blinking back at me whenever I opened that document. And being able to do that work and undertake that journey together while receiving guidance and mentorship made it a lot less daunting and a lot more accessible. One of the personal anecdotes that I've received has been that someone who really loved writing ended up doing the course, and then she moved on to actually publish a poetry book that was recognized by the Ministry of Tourism in India. And I think she's continued to work with us as an ambassador. So I'm really excited to see what we have as part of our cohort this year. I'm excited to see where we move forward in that journey. And lastly, the most important bit, this is the QR code that you can use to actually start enrolling for the course. I would also like to request Virat for his help in sharing the link to the enrollment form and also our website so that you can actually check out more information about the program. While we wait for those to be shared in the chat, lastly, I will open the place up for Q&A. Thank you so much for taking out the time today. We'll also share our social media handles so that you can actually keep up with all of the latest updates and hear from our faculty members and TFs and all that they have to share as tips and tricks. So with this, I'll stop sharing my screen. All right. With the spotlight on Tane, I'm going to open the session up for questions and answers. So for anyone who would like to raise their hand and ask a question, please move forward. Please go ahead. Yes, Hajira, go ahead.
Will this course be a live session or will it be recorded?
It'll be
These are,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, no worries. This ended up being one of the questions that both of us would overlap and want to answer. This is an entirely live course, so you'll be having Saturday and Sunday sessions with Professor Arpita and with Tane. So it'll look a lot like this, but much longer so that you have the time to be able to engage with them.
And what will be the timing?
So the timings for these sessions tentatively are 11 to 1 o'clock on Saturdays and on Sundays.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. I know that we had another hand raised which went down, so I think she also wanted to ask the timings. If you have any other questions, we can also have questions related to the activities that we've done today itself. Yes, Meera, go ahead.
Yes, actually, I have a question related to the activities that we have done. So, whenever we start our essay, is it okay if we start with something that we consider a failure and then develop it into a learning opportunity, or should we always start our essay on a positive note?
I don't think that, and this is the case for any kind of writing, there nobody is going to be able to give you a rule saying you always have to do this or you always have to do that. Yes, people might make suggestions about what works more effectively depending on the context. If you're asking about a college essay, I would say it really depends on what your story is. It depends on what your specific circumstances are. But no, you don't always have to start with a failure and then show growth. It depends on what your story is and how you want to tell your story. Does that make sense? I know that it's a vague answer, but there really is no set formula.
I understand. Yeah, I understood. Thank you.
Akshay has a question, I believe. Yeah, Akshay.
Okay, so I follow this general pattern of writing where I tend to start from a quote, either by some writer or myself, and that serves as the hook for my essay. Do you
Hmm.
think that's a good strategy to adopt even while writing college essays? Because we need to grab that attention as well.
So it can be. A hook is always a good strategy in that an essay should have a hook. Does the hook always have to be a quote? I'm not so sure. It also depends on the kind of quote that you pick, because you don't want to use, for instance, an overused quote unless you're going to complicate it later. If there is a quote, the quote must have a callback, is what I would say. Don't just start with a hook that is then just the hook. If you're using the quote, maybe reference it again in the essay, maybe bring it back. Um, as a general tip, I think it's an effective idea to always start with a quote. Is it the best you can always do? I'm not so sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have two questions in the chat. So we have Priya asking what exactly can the format of a college essay look like, which I think is quite an elaborate and daunting question. So I think you've been dealt a tough hand here,
Yeah,
Pranay.
I mean, I think it depends also on where you're applying. If you're asking about the Common App essay, that is an about 600, 650 word essay. So I would say maybe a 4 to 5 paragraph essay is the general format of what you would do for a Common App essay. If you were writing a statement of purpose for a UK college, for instance, that would be a bit different in that the what would be expected of you in that essay would also be different. Generally, the format would be that, in terms of the content, would be that you begin with, and this doesn't have to mean that the beginning comes first in your life or is chronologically first. You begin with the hook for your story. You begin by giving them a sense of what your story is going to be, and then you weave your life in to ultimately tell that story, and towards the end you sort of close it, which is why for a Common App it would be about about 5 to 6 paragraph essay. The first paragraph might be setting the tone, setting the context. The middle 3 paragraphs would be the body of your essay, where you explore the themes, ideas, journey. And the last paragraph would be something where you bring everything together, give it a sort of conclusion. But that's a very general sort of format. Again, it depends on what your story is and how you want to tell it. Is there another? There's a couple more questions actually.
I'll
Uh,
combine two questions for you because we had this in our Q&A section and also in the chat box. So in one way, it was put across as how do I improve in writing, especially descriptive writing? And we also had a question which is a bit more overall and I think is closely tied, which is how we
hmm,
can write better.
big questions. Um, I would need a course to give the answer for this question actually. In brief, I would say both these questions, the only answer I can give right now is, I think, to recognize that writing is a craft. That is the first step. No one, I mean, some people, yes, are talented. Talent is, of course, a parameter in anything you do in life. But writing is a craft, which means that it can be honed, which means that there are techniques involved in writing. And I think the first step can be to recognize that it is a craft, that it group that you get better, your hand becomes steadier with more practice, and of course with the right tools. The tools are the techniques of writing, only some of which we've been able to touch upon today. There are many, many more. I think that's the only answer I can give right now, Isha.
I think that's a very excellent one as well because confronted with a question as elaborate as that one or as big as that one, it can be quite difficult. I know we're running over time, but we want to make sure that everyone who has any queries is able to get their answers. So if anyone would like to just unmute and ask a question, please go ahead. I'll wait for a minute if we have any more burning queries that people are sitting on. I'm starting to feel like we've done a very comprehensive job in the last 1 hour, where a lot of the questions were answered as and when they came up, and people may not have as many queries left. Thank you so much, Virat, for sharing all of the necessary information about the course that we've gotten a glimpse into today in the chat box. For everyone who's here with us today, thank you so much for taking out this 1 hour on a Thursday evening. And I really want to take this opportunity to wish all of you a very good festive season as well. I know it's Diwali. In some ways, we've been able to experience the firecrackers in this call as well, hearing it from different background noises. I hope you've been able to take back a lot today, because I know for a fact that I have a lot to think over. One thing that we can do as an activity to actually be able to say goodbye is note down one key takeaway that we're having from this session in our chat box, and that can be our goodbye as we try to leave. Oh, we have two questions as well. Oh, one question that I missed out on was from Priya. So if we want to write a short and crisp essay, let's say a life journey of ours, what should it actually include?
Okay, I mean, I have one tentative answer. I did actually read the question. I have one tentative answer for you, which is that no life is a single journey. We have journeys in our life. So I would say the first step is to pick which journey are you trying to convey in your essay. The second part of the answer is unfortunately that I would have to learn a little more about your life journey before I could answer that question. Because, like I said, it's your journey. There is no set formula for me to tell you how to make it short and crisp without actually learning a bit more about you. So that's the kind of question that you should save for a workshop when we have more time to work on a draft that you've already prepared. Yeah.
Perfect. I think that marks our last question of the day. And I'll go over the activity that I've planned for us in terms of being able to say goodbye to each other. So if we can take a moment, or actually a minute, to type out what has been our key takeaway today. And once I say go, I think it'll be really nice if we can all enter together, and we can have a flurry of responses in the chat box. So I'll just wait for a minute. And I think Tane may have some takeaways as well. Virat, I'll also request you to share yours while I type mine.
I had
And I'm
just
really
opened my chat.
yeah. And the biggest thing is I'm going to be a bit selfish here, and I'm going to mark the time based on when I finish my response. So please, everyone, get a crack on it. All right, so let's hit enter together and actually see the key takeaways that all of us have had. I think it's something that we can all benefit from. Thank you so much for taking out the time today, everyone. It is so good to see such elaborate responses. I really like Tane's response about how people's investment in writing is still there. I think that erosion through AI has really created that anxiety in us, and to be able to see that all of us are thinking so deeply about how we can write our story better is so, so heart touching. I'll also take a moment to read out some of the longer ones we had, which was today might just be a moment I will write about in my essay, a session which taught me not to belittle the little moments in life. They might prove to be the most important part of my college essay. I do have to say, this is such a meta realization, and I really like that happening. We also have self-expression is best done when the essay is natural, as in it does not have a strict format in terms of chronology and structure. I think that's so true, because we started off with admitting how formulaic essay writing has become. And in this last 1 hour, we've actually learned that that formula may not be working anymore. And perhaps it's really time to rethink it. It's not just about a single journey. There's a lot that we can write, so we should choose wisely. Oh, for sure. I really like Mayura's reflection that it needs to be who you truly are rather than who you're expected to be. I think writing is a great way to be able to reclaim your story and to tell it in the way that matters to you. I think the what to edit out question had us really thinking. So I see a lot of thematic similarities in some of the reflections about that.
I'm glad to see that too, because I think that is the question we often forget to ask ourselves.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking out this time this evening. It's been great to be able to interact with all of you, to hear what it's been like, to learn all of these amazing myths and how to really counter them, and to see the examples in action as well. I think that's something that really supported the learning journey that we've had over the last 1 hour. I look forward to seeing all of you this winter. I'm sure Tane does the same. And I hope you have a lovely rest of the evening and have a good festive season. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, everyone.